I call the honourable member for Bowen.
Thank you.
Bowman.
Thank you, Speaker. Madam Speaker, we're an optimistic nation and frankly, I think you could say we rate ourselves, whether it's a sporting contest, whether it's economically, whether it's tourism, at any level, we're a country that's enormously optimistic. Now, we're not, of course, unblemished by error. At times we have elected a Labor government that has plunged us into debt and deficit, but at the heart of it all, we are optimistic enough to know that we can make our way through it. Now, of course, in any international comparison, we don't have the debt that other nations do. We often turn to Europe and look for the saviour of Europe, the banking nation of Germany, which only has 55% of debt to GDP ratio. So on that comparison, it's favourable. But let us never forget the strong and resilient AAA rated banks of 2009. Let us never forget the strong mining sector. And let us never forget the large surplus, the large cupboard of resources that John Howard left for the Labor Party to help them through that global financial crisis. And the answer was quite simple, Speaker. In late 2008, Treasury did panic with inappropriate modelling to find that there would be a gap in our GDP thanks to the crisis. But within 6 months, they had corrected their input, understood that we were not directly tied to the American economy, revised their estimates in early 2009 to say that there would not be a hole in our GDP. But of course, politically, that wasn't good news for then Rudd and Swan, who continued on their crazy 6.5% of GDP stimulus that ran for 4 years and ran us into the ground. And coming from Brisbane, as the member for Brian does, she'll be very familiar with those tunnel borers that work their way quietly under Brisbane, building those magnificent tunnels. And that was the Labor Party plunging us down, entombing us in debt, and then, of course, getting stuck and having to be bailed out. This was a Labor Party strategy, of course, that had no end. They could neither stop the boats nor stop the debt. And so that has fallen upon us. Through no fault of our own, Speaker, we are determined to find solutions. But I say today that in 2015 we are a different nation. We've gone through extraordinary tough choices in 2014. We've taken tough choices around stopping new spending, around treating taxpayers' money with respect, about being cautious about overspending and pulling back, often pausing and freezing payments in order to get that tumbling deficit under control. John Howard once said that going into debt was easy. It's like riding an escalator down to the basement. But coming out of debt is the hard work. It's like climbing up a fire escape. And I can never promise the people in the gallery an easy path. But I can say that young Australians primarily view their life as one that is together in many ways with a large amount of private debt, something they've become used to. So they expect government to be able to manage public debt without sacrificing our ability to put food on the table, have security in our job, and be able to access the essential services that we could afford last year. They're not always cheap, but they should be affordable. So in 2015, Madam Speaker, we are looking for an optimistic projection of where this country can go. We are looking for a roadshow about the intergenerational report that doesn't say that we're all doomed, that doesn't make puerile projections about needing to treble GST if we do nothing by 2030, in some sort of Malthusian fallacy that, of course, nothing ever changes. Of course, times will change. Of course, international appetite for our resources will change. Of course, conditions, our currency, our terms of trade will all change. And they are very, very hard to predict, Madam Speaker. I mean, we can't even predict the budget deficit for this year within a few $billion. I mean, why should we be overly reliant on generational predictions? My point is this. Australians are fundamentally optimistic and they want an optimistic message from their government that we can do this together by working together. We can do it by driving growth, by driving revenue, by driving entrepreneurship, and through that opportunity. Because government just has one job at hand, and that is to provide fundamentally opportunity to its people. I mean, in the end, we can shuffle money between citizens, but we have to provide opportunity for everyone and give them every chance at success. And that must be the message in 2015. Let us not be overly reliant on intergenerational predictions which basically say we must go without now in order to give money to someone a generation from now. Not overly reliant on tax white papers that are basically smokescreens to say we're trying to change the amount of tax we pay. Australians are asking for a projection that is clear and optimistic, and that can be done by identifying what Australia's great assets are and capitalising on them. Australians, particularly young Australians, know fundamentally what they are, that we dream more than anything of granting a qualification, and we don't mind paying for what we deserve and what we have earned. We don't mind as long as we know we have a chance at owning our own place, at getting and keeping a job, and making sure that services are available to those that need them most. Not so much a budget emergency, but we have a fairness emergency, and it's something that must be addressed in 2015.